I'm glad you're back with me again. This is part of our RE/MAX Commercial Top Producer Series, and listen, I'm really honored. We're just kicking this off. Richard Juge is my second person that I get to talk to, and not to puff him up too much, but I guess if we could put a little crown on King Richard, that's what I would do here. We're really lucky to get some of his time. So Richard, listen, thank you. I truly thank you so much for taking some time to be with us here. I appreciate this big time, and it looks like everything is going well in your world.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Obviously, I feel like I'm with the Tony Robbins of the RE/MAX group here, so I'm honored to be with you. What can I say?
Oh, that's too kind. So you guys, listen, a little bit of background. Truly, you need to understand this. So Richard has been around in the industry. Well, he got involved in 1988, and he's been a RE/MAX commercial broker owner for a very long time. His resume is a mile long. It's nothing can touch it. And I had been with this brand and in this network for quite many years before I started kind of helping out the department. And when I stepped up, Richard was the leader of the leader. Not only, of course, was he, international president of CCIM, but he was also a leader within our brand. And so I got to watch him firsthand, and it was kind of like one of those like, oh man, here's the guy. And it's interesting to say that all these many years later, he's still the guy. So I'm glad to be here with you. So with that, let's get going, guys. Pay attention. Smart cat here. Okay, I'm going to try to get down to some real nuggets for you, so we can get through this thing, and Richard can give us some, real true information on what it takes to be super successful in the commercial real estate business. So, Richard, here we go. Let's get started with this. So, 1988 is when you kicked off your career in commercial real estate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And right out of school.
I was going to say, you had to right out of Tulane. You decided that you were going to be a commercial broker. So you said, I'm not selling houses. I'm going right into commercial.
My dad was a State Farm agent. It was not possible to take over his company. And he introduced me to a CCIM person who was in the business, who was leasing space next to him. He became a mentor to me in the business, and I just plopped right into commercial and had no clue. I tell people my college degree is in pre-unemployment, which is history, and and so just found my way into commercial real estate by sheer luck.
Okay, so that's interesting. So right out of the gate, you were introduced to CCIM, and of course, you've had the most amazing CCIM career. You guys, our last person that we spoke to, Doug Jennings, of course, he's a CCIM member, certified commercial investment member. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in just a moment. So you went right straight into commercial. That was easy. But tell me about this broker owner thing. Okay. So you decided that you didn't want to go work for another firm, and you wanted to be a broker owner and run your own shop. What led to that?
I was with a bigger firm here in town, great firm, just was not affording me the sort of the independence, I guess, that I wanted. And I was kind of getting pigeonholed on certain things. And another tie into CCIM was that there was a guy named Bob Behrens who was very involved with CCIM back in the Institute, with RE/MAX, and with the Institute. He was a former CCIM president. His wife worked with RE/MAX in the corporate level. So this was about the time they were branding a commercial standalone sort of logo and identity. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And to me, it was a good mix because it was a great brand. I was certainly aware of who RE/MAX was. And while it certainly has a residential connotation, I could see where they were trying to brand commercial separate and away from it. So the little story of me getting involved with my franchises we have a big regional owner, Dennis Curtin. He was trying to bring me in to pitch me like a residential agent. And I was just like, Dennis, just how much is this so we can sign the papers and get going? So I was, Bob Behrens had done such a good job sort of promoting this brand and the identity of what it was going to be that I just hopped right into it. So bought a franchise. And by the way, I had nobody with me. It was just myself. And I was just incrementally building it as the years went on.
So let's go off of that right now. What's your company? I took a look at your roster and took a look at your business, but tell me about your business today. You look like you're like a perfect size with the number of people you have working with you, but you're also a deal maker. You're not just a manager. Is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm player coach, and I try and be the most benevolent coach that you can be, in the sense of I'm not answering phone calls, obviously, at this point, and trying to take deals. And so we just try and spread the wealth. But, New Orleans is an MSA of 1.3 million. If I call myself a mid-sized company, I don't consider myself a boutique. I consider myself below the big boys and girls and above the small boutiques. And so with plus or minus 10 agents on average, we can pretty much do anything in this town, and yet we specialize in commercial. We don't do any residential, obviously.
So let's talk about that. You can do anything. So I run a boutique. We're a smaller group. You're a next size up. I really like our smaller size, and we get to be super selective in what we do, but we're pretty much just listing brokers. And we only pick, buyer tenant assignments and some of those kinds of things very, very selectively. So you've got greater depth of services, but tell me a little bit about that. What is Remax Commercial Brokers doing in the way of services for your clients?
Yeah, and of course, if you're in Houston, Texas, I tell recruits that come in, you can be a tenant rep office broker specialist on the west side of town in Houston. That's how big it is. And if you're in Paducah, Kentucky, I think you pretty much have to be a general commercial practitioner and probably do a little bit of everything. In our office, I do think there's specialization by product type. There's some specialization by geography within our market. So I might have somebody who's an industrial broker or an industrial and office broker because they kind of tend to jive in a bit. You'll see office and retail jive a little bit. But I can be a multi-family specialist. I can be, and even with our geography, I can be North Shore of the lake. I can be kind of central to the city. And look, I run the I-10 corridor from about Lafayette, Louisiana, which is maybe 150 miles west of me, to Gulfport, Mississippi, which is maybe 50 miles east of me. So, because I work more of like a corporate kind of clientele.
Right. So Richard, touch on this idea of specialization versus generalist. So obviously within our brand, we have the opportunity to be generalists, and we can touch office and retail and land, and we get to go do what we want to do and with whom we want to do it and all the rest of it. It sounds like you're directing your firm to have a level of specialization within a product category or certainly the geographic area, but are you a believer in that? Are you a believer in being a generalist, or what are your thoughts on all of that?
Again, I think a lot of this is driven by market size. In our market, I think if you just say, I'm going to be a generalist, then you're just going to find yourself kind of floundering and picking up whatever you can. And that's not to say in a small market of 50,000 people, maybe you need to be a generalist to feed your family. So, but in our market, I would say, I tell people coming in here, pick a specialty, pick a geography. If it's industrial on the west side of town, pick that, farm it, work it, become a specialist in it. And look, if you get an office deal on the east side of town and you know what you're doing, go ahead and work it. It's not, you don't have to necessarily pigeonhole yourself into just that. But I think the people that I see that are the most successful brokers, there's great multifamily brokers here. There's great industrial brokers here that's what they do. That's what they specialize in, and they're known for it. So they're the go-to. And again, I think that market size drives that.
So you just made a really important point here. So what I'm doing, Richard, is as I interview each of you experts, as you top producers, and you give me these nuggets, hands down, you are certainly saying, as you take a look at our industry, it's pretty well known within our industry that generally speaking, specialists make more money than generalists. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
And, and even at a broader level, I hope I'm not committing heresy here, but certainly in our market, if you try and do part residential and part commercial, you're just going to be tagged as sort of an in-betweener. And I'll say to the residential people, the best producers in residential here, they don't touch commercial. So maybe, again, that's driven by market size. But here, I'd say pick a specialty, go a certain direction. And it's not to say that if you're 25 years old and you say, I'm going to be an industrial person on the west side of town, 10 years later, you might find yourself being the multifamily person in a regional geography. So who knows what the future holds for you.
So listen, I want to poke the beast in the side here a little bit, if that's okay with you. Mark, what does that mean? So let's talk about this for just a second. You have really strong opinions about this. I do too. And the opinions can be all over the place. And interestingly, here we work within a brand. I call it a hybrid brand because a hybrid brand will work both sides of the fence, residential and commercial. And I work with a really large firm here in the Twin Cities, Remax Results, but I'm also a broker in Florida and a broker in Illinois. So I get to touch lots of different models. And in our model here, Richard, is that residential agents are given the liberty to dabble, is the word I'm going to use, within commercial. There's nothing about it that I like. I think there's a certain place maybe for it on a very small end, like, maybe a 5-unit apartment building, maybe. But I want your opinion on this because, as a educator, the top end educator and someone who's been in this industry for decades, there's a level of liability when the residential agent starts to work within commercial. There's a level of reputation, but can you just talk a little bit about this? Because this is the struggle that we have every day within our brokerage, within our brand. And I don't necessarily want to be the one here saying, no, don't do this or don't risk it. But just talk a little bit about this when you see this idea of residential people working in commercial.
Well, I guess I'll draw an analogy to like the legal field, right? I mean, if I've got because I guess where my head's going is environmental in our business. If I've got an environmental issue, I want an environmental attorney. I don't want a generalist attorney, similar maybe in accounting, right? If I'm doing real estate stuff, I need not all CPAs are competent in doing real estate related accounting. So me personally, I'm looking for that expert in those other fields. I just have a firm belief that in our industry, they're looking for the same thing. I don't want a Johnny-come-lately or a generalist, and I'll butcher this too, but wherever in the NAR code of ethics and whatever else, we're supposed to represent our clients. And
right.
If you're trying to pick up one commercial deal because, hey, it's going to be a nice fee, and are you really servicing your client properly? And that's, at the end of the day, I'd like to think that's why I'm a staunch advocate of being a practitioner solo in the sphere, that I just don't think you can be a jack of all trades because you're a master of none if you do it that way.
I'm with you all the way. And Article 11 in our Code of Ethics, I just get such a kick out of this. Article 11, how it says that, if you're not competent in doing the assignment or doing the work, you need to tell your client. And so I'll joke with this all the time saying, hey, by the way, client, I'll be happy to sell your office building. Just so you know, I don't know what I'm doing. And of course, that's ludicrous. It doesn't happen. So, well, that's an interesting take. I know your take on this. Let me take another spin on it though. Let me do this if you don't mind, Richard. And that is, can a residential agent become a commercial broker in your opinion?
Absolutely. In fact, I think they're very different businesses. Again, I don't know how much of this is by market size. In my opinion, it's a different business. I wouldn't sell my mom's house. That's about the best way I can say it, because I don't know the market values well enough. I know there's a different process to it. Could I do it? Sure, I could do it. And look, maybe the reason why instinctively residential people and or commercial people try and do the other, hey, I've got this person that knows me, they trust me. That's a big part of it for sure. But that's this much of it. And the bigger picture is everything about the skill sets that you have to be good at it. And you touched on something a second ago about liability. I mean, I see some of these Johnny-come-lately residential companies where they're doing these $200 a transaction, $200 a month, come sign up, and they have 100 agents. I don't know how those brokers sleep at night with just these people that have no clue what they're doing. I would just be up sweating, worrying about liability. And in commercial, I've been through a couple of lawsuits. If I said a couple in my 28-ish years of being a broker, 3, but where we didn't do anything wrong. But boy, if I'd have had somebody really inexperienced, it could be very problematic.
Yeah.
And look, we're business to business. I think that's fair to say, more than residential is, C to B, B to C to consumer.
Well said. In fact, I wouldn't sell my mom's house because it wasn't too many years ago that we had to sell my mom's house. And I grew up there. If anyone knew that house well, it was certainly me, and I'm not touching it. I'm going to go find a great residential agent and let them do what they do best. So I like that a lot. Okay, let's get into CCIM. Now, I know you could talk about this forever. You've got endless hours, endless years at this. I don't want to dive in too deeply. But I want to, first of all, for the viewers, you guys got to understand this. So Richard has been involved as the president in 2010. He's been an instructor for years. He's written curriculum. He's been around the world teaching and speaking and keynoting. So CCIM flows through his blood through and through. So in terms of a credential, CCIM, SIOR, the thing that I find really interesting about this, Richard, is that number one, we're a small boutique shop. Our brokers are all required to go through CCIM. It's a requisite. You must do it. And as long as you're working on it, it's okay if it takes you a little bit longer to get pinned, but I absolutely want you engaged in the process the whole time. But I want to talk about it relative to top producer. Okay, that's where I want to go with you. And so what bearing does a CCIM and an SIOR have on being a top producer in your opinion?
Well, I'll parse those two out. And look, I was your prototypical middle class Southern guy in a college where I was getting through, got my degree, passed. I actually did it in 4 years, which was quite an accomplishment for me. But when I came out, I had some business classes, I had some accounting, I had some finance, but I didn't have anything. And this is also, the late 80s. Real estate wasn't as much a career as it is today, or wasn't considered. It was almost looked down upon, maybe. And I think nowadays there are college curriculums that do it. But for me, I stepped into, the guy I told you that brought me into the business happened to be a CCIM instructor, and he led me into it. And the light for me in that 101 class, and I'll say it this way, and I've said it 1,000 times, I don't care if you sell tacos or shoes or light bulbs or whatever it is, take that 101 class, because it is business fundamentals, number one, but it is the fundamentals of a real estate deal. How do I buy it? What does that cash flow look like? And if I sell it, and how do you measure that return? And if you don't have that base level in this business, I think you're just in left field. And I'll just say it that brutally honest. And I think there's two classes of citizens in my market: those that have taken CCIM related materials and have that foundation, that the business acumen that you need. And it's the 20-80 principle markets. The 20% that do fight to go get that pen and fight through it are doing 80% of the work, and the 80% that don't are the 20% that the bottom producers. So
absolutely, yeah. No, once again, I'm with you there, Richard. If you just don't belong here, if you can't talk the talk, and you don't understand these fundamentals. In fact, there's nothing more frustrating. But then again, we could draw lots of analogies to lots of different industries, saying, why in the world, would you let that surgeon in the door, the dentist in the door, if they can't even? So we won't do all those obvious ones here today. So suffice it to say, in your mind, to have these credentials brings with you not just a knowledge base, respect within the industry, but it's basically it's kind of like these fundamentals that you need to get to the highest levels, which represent the highest earnings in the business. Is that a decent summary?
Yeah, and SIOR is the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors, and that more recognizes that you are a producer, then puts some initials behind you, and I think bolsters your credibility. My CCIM friends might not want to hear this, but I dare say having an SIOR, to those that are in the know within the industry, go, oh, that's a real producer. I think the connotation to CCIM is that's an educated person. I'd like to think, and I personally believe, that CCIMs are the producers for sure. Maybe there's a perception that SIOR is a step higher of actual producers, but their education far lacks what CCIM has. So to me, it's a bundle. And look, I love RE/MAX. It's a brand. I find if I go in the grocery store and somebody, oh, RE/MAX, and people know that's a big company. So as opposed to being Juge and Associates or NewOrleansRealEstate.com or whatever you might be, I find RE/MAX is a brand that people go, oh, okay, good. And beyond that, Mark, I think people in the business, people in the know, when they see CCIM and they see SIOR, they go, oh, he's not just with a big company. He is a top producer in the industry. So, and we're a smaller market. I'm not Houston, I'm not Dallas. And if I was in those markets, I could have an MBA from Cornell, and maybe I just put MBA behind my name. But in this market, I find you got to have it. And I would think, you're in Minneapolis, right? I mean, so
yeah,
I would think in a market like yours, it would be
Yeah.
Very important. And I'll shut up after this, but Remax has a bar chart. Maybe you can get a copy of it and post it in this thing when you edit this out. But the CCIMs make considerably more money than the the non credentialed people. And is that a chicken or an egg? I believe it just says you're dedicated to the business, you know what you're doing, and therefore it's going to result in higher dollars for you.
Actually, I do use that chart. I use it for the industry, Richard, when I teach top producers and I bring up each of the designations and what the average earnings are. And the one that I find most interesting, just as a side note, is the ALC. So when you look at the accredited land consultant and what their earnings are relative to everybody else, it's just kind of like, holy smokes, that's a crazy thing. All right, let's get down to your business. So I want to dive in now to your business to put a context around moving into the top producer discussion specifically. So you're doing deals today, or you're managing people, or both? What's going on with you today specifically?
Both. I mean, I am much more of a producer than I am a manager.
Okay.
And of course, I have an office manager to facilitate sort of the paperwork. I do play sounding board. Most of my people are pretty well experienced. My son's 23. He's starting with me, thank God.
Oh, good.
So he's my new baby in the office. But next to him is a guy who's been here 5 years. So my point is they kind of know what they're doing. I think we all look for validation or a sounding board on most of our deals, but most of what I'm doing is producing day to day.
Okay. And so what does that look like when you're doing this business? Are you working as a team? Are you working with you and an administrator, you and an associate broker? What's your day in, day out structure look like for your support and your brokerage team?
Yeah, well, that's the luck or the beauty of being the broker is I'd say 90% of what I work on here is with another agent in this office. So I don't have an executive administrative sort of assistant that does deals with me. I do have property managers and people like that in my sphere. But and look, as you get older in the business, you get lazier maybe in terms of I don't want to go show it. So
sure,
now that I'm balding and a little punchier than you are, Mark, I can have that luxury of saying, "Hey, go open the door and do that." But look, beyond that sounds kind of stupid. But just to have that new broker, medium broker, senior broker. Boy, that would be the perfect structure, in my opinion, because you get the benefits of what every one of those people brings. The younger person with maybe the street hustle, the middle producer that is in the mainstream doing what they're doing, and the older, crustier person that knows kind of the ins and outs of it.
That's it. I'll describe it that. Can I still do what I did 20 years ago? And yeah, technically I can. Am I as good at it? I'm absolutely not as good at it. And I'm lucky. I've got 2 of my 5 kids work in my business. Hayden, he was a young 23-year-old pinned CCIM and got his college degree in real estate, and Sawyer's working on his CCIM right now. And what these guys can do, I mean, they can dance circles around me.
Right.
It's just the way it is. But then again, when it comes to crisis management or problem solving or ideas, that's where we shine. And that's I'm with you. That's like the perfect world when we can combine these people with these skill sets. The other part, naturally, as you know, is that as a listing broker, because that's pretty much all we do, my clients are typically going to be maybe 55 to 75 years old. And many of those clients, they kind of also want to be able to connect with me. But they also want to make sure that behind me has the depth and speed to be responsive and get the work done. It sounds like you've got that same exact thing going in your firm.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're lost brothers at birth or something, Mark. But yeah, no, I agree 1,000%. And look, when you're 50-ish, if there's a benefit of growing older in this business, is when you're 50, people 40 to 60. When you're 60, them 50 to 70. And that's probably your prime earning years. That's probably when the people that know the most. When you're 23, what do you know? 18-year-olds to 28-year-olds. So as you do move up, there's certainly something to be said that I'm still learning every damn day. So I'll take it as long as I'm still learning and growing. And take in those young people because they've just got more horsepower. They have a better attitude, I think, generally than we do, which is a good balance.
That's a good point. I can't dispute it. Many times they do have a little bit better attitude, but we'll leave that one alone. Okay, now let's get into pipelines. Let's get into workflow. And what I like about your perspective, Richard, is that you bring so much more than just your everyday practice. So as we start moving in this conversation toward, top producer and what it takes, and you've watched all these people be crazy successful, because no matter how good we are or how much we're earning or anything else, there's always going to be 20 people, 40 people, 100 people who are, kicking butt way above us. And everything is relative with that. So here's what I want to talk with you about. Focusing on just the big deals, mixing in big deals with medium deals, doing a lot of volume with small deals. Give me your thoughts on that. You've seen people make a lot of money in this business doing it all the different ways like that. But what do you think a little bit about that?
In fact, my mentor, the guy I was talking about, told me early on, if you focus on selling a $500,000 building in your local market, there's tends to be maybe a better fee. You can probably work it yourself. And what is your net on that relative to what somebody who might be, doing these $10 million deals? And as you go to do these 10, 20, $30 million deals in multifamily, we see them in our market, those commission fees get, cut pretty hard. So I think to some degree markets, the grass is always greener. Oh boy, I wish I could be doing these bigger deals. I mean, I live in if I said $1 million to $5 million world, that's, and again, 20 years ago, maybe I was at a 500 to a $2 million world. So I think there's something to be said as you get older. Hopefully, that's going up for you, and depends on the market and what your deal sizes are. But I think it depends on the market. I live in that $2 to $5 million thing, and right now we're venturing into some bigger deals, so that's good. I don't know. Good question. And I hadn't really thought through a specific answer other than that's where I do live, and so I guess by design that's where I focus on.
And so when you see the producers out there who knock out 3 or 4 mega deals a year, I mean, do you ever look at that and go, I want to do that? Or you look at that and say, nah, it's not my game. I want to make sure I have enough other stuff going on. So what about that?
Well, I guess that gets back to the analogy of, you need those base hits and those doubles, right? And then just within whatever you carve out. And I think the individual needs to figure out, where am I in the market? Age-wise, maybe what size market am I in? And that's got to balance into this discussion. But look, what pays the utility bills, what feeds your family, if those are the singles and doubles, and if you're doing 2,000-foot leases or 5,000-foot leases and selling $500,000 buildings, that's what feeds the family. And to what degree you get a $3, $4, $5 million deal, hey, more power to you. I don't think it prohibits you from working that. They're just fewer and further between and harder to get.
So it sounds like you have, just like with us, no different. There is a natural progression where you can move up in the asset size, and we're very much a 1 to 5, but we're doing 7s and we're doing 8s, and moving to 10, and we've touched some bigger stuff, and I'm perfectly comfortable with it, but it's a little bit different game. So you're not necessarily targeting 30, 40, 50 million. You're staying very comfortably in your zone of the 1 to 5, knowing good fees, works really, really well. Lots of product out there. That's one of the key things for me when we look at just the sheer numbers. We just have a lot of that product out there to go after. Fair to say?
Absolutely. No, very, very well said. And again, I keep repeating myself, I guess, but if I'm in Houston, Texas, there's going to be a hell of a lot more $10 to $50 million deals. And look, do they make more money in Houston, Texas than we make in New Orleans? Yes.
Right.
I'll probably have a better lifestyle, maybe they do. But there's a work-life balance that you got to figure out. So, the intro here is that I'm a top producer. Hey, look, I've done extremely well. I'm extremely lucky and blessed in so many ways, but I work my rear end off, and that's at the end of the day what makes it happen is just working and being committed.
Okay, so now that you said that, I'm going to go down that road. Okay, so you opened up that door, and it's one of my later sections here. I had some other things I wanted to talk about with prospecting and marketing, but I'm going to come to that because now you just went with I work my butt off. A little scary for some people, especially the next generation. When they hear dad talking about he works his butt off, it's like, I don't want to work my butt off, but I want to make the kind of cake that guy makes over there. So let's talk about that for just a moment. And so here's what I'm interested in. And everyone's definition of top producer is going to be a little bit different. You do work your butt off. You put in a lot of hours. Can you be a top producer and not work your butt off?
Yeah, and I've got to watch what I say because maybe my agents might actually watch this, but there is definitely something to be said about being smarter, work smarter, not harder. I believe there's some truth to that. But look, if you're doing this part-time, you're going to get part-time pay. It's pretty, I see a correlation between how many hours you work. And look, maybe you're computer based, maybe you're live in person based, and I can break down. Look, if I had, if I can't really stereotype what the one sort of personality type is that makes a top producer in my office. They're all over the board. They're all very different people, but I generally say most of my people are top producers in our market, and that's because they work. And that's the bottom line formula. I mean, I'll get to it and probably stealing thunder from a question you might ask, but the number one thing is hustle. And if I were to define hustle, I could define hustle three or four different ways, but that's getting up, that's doing the work, that's becoming educated. I mean, I could probably break that into 10 things, Mark, but hustle, hustle, hustle. If you're hustling, you're going to make money.
So I like that. Now, actually Remax plays off the hustle word quite a lot in some of their, marketing and promotions and all the rest of that. I correlate hustle with a level of intensity. So, some people will meet me and be like, God, he's really intense. And it's like, well, I am hustling. I'm moving and I don't have a lot of time to waste. I've got family to support. I've got to make a living here. So we are hustling. And so it's interesting to hear you use that word in terms of being successful. And when you look at all those CCIMs out there who are knocking it out of the park, Richard, and you meet them all the time, you've met them all around the world. Is that the common attribute that you're seeing across the board, that these are men and women that are relentless in their approach to their business and earning?
Yeah, and I'm thinking through again, when and if my agents watch this, they're going to go, "Oh, I know who he's talking about." But I have an Asian agent. She's pretty obvious. She's the one we have. When I say she hustles, she's been involved with the Taiwanese chamber. She speaks both dialects. She's brought in a Beijing, symphony to New Orleans. I mean, she is working that Asian community hard, hard, hard. She's got calendars and I mean, she doesn't stop. And she has been a perennial top producer, period, day in, day out. I can contrast her with a guy who's knocking on 40 years old here. The guy is a social butterfly. He's at every event. I dare say, and he's going to love when he sees this, he's not the magna summa cum laude in our office, but this guy works hard. And then I'm going to go to a third person, which is another guy, almost a quiet assassin. He is very computer based. He's very web based, and he's producing and prospecting in a very different way, a very different pool. But all three of those people are very, very, very successful. Couldn't be more opposite personalities, the three of them. So, but the common denominator is they're working it. And it doesn't mean you're here at 7. One guy is here. He's the first in and the last out, and he's producing. You don't necessarily have to be the one that's working 10 hours a day. There's maybe smarter ways to do that, but you got to work.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like that for a couple different reasons. I like the idea that, once again, it isn't not a type that is going to go out there and be that top producer. It can be lots of different personalities, lots of different ways of getting there. And I think that's really encouraging to people, that there isn't this single way. It's one of the first things I teach, that, listen, even if I'm out there trying to educate somebody about what we do, that's just simply what we do. It doesn't mean it's the way. It just happens to be a way. And, everyone should find their own way that works best for them. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of putting in the time and the balance with the life. Now, I'm assuming you're kind of you're a family man. So I'm assuming you've been able to work this out. That are you working a lot of weekends? Are you working a lot of evenings? Have you been able to be a successful broker owner and deal maker and still balance out with a personal life?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as we age, certain things are changing in my life, but I'm blessed to have an awesome wife who's just supported me from day one. We've been married for 25 years. I'll see if I can get myself in trouble on this. So yeah, 25 years, and just, she's been a rock, and she comes in here and helps on certain things, not a producer, but just she'll help back office stuff. But Look, I don't work weekends. It's not to say I don't answer the phone or emails on weekends, as everything is connected nowadays. I think we're all stuck with that burden, maybe. But uh, in the commercial world, that's if I were to just take a 22-year-old in here, and if they said I want to be in real estate and guiding in residential versus commercial, I think we have the luxury of being more 9 to 5. But it's not to say those are my hours. And I will, it's going to sound conceited, but I work a lot of hours, probably too many. And I'm
Right,
trying to
right.
figure out,
No, but I
uh,
appreciate that. I appreciate that honesty. Okay. So I do. Now, some will come out there with it like a badge of honor, right? That I'm in at 7 o'clock, I'm leaving at 7 o'clock. And then there's the rest of us that say, I do my best to try to achieve it. But the reality is that sometimes, yeah, we have to put in more hours than we care to because that's just the demands of the job. And if you're not willing to step up to that, then you may not belong here.
and look, part of that's being a broker and a producer that,
Yeah.
as things will change around here, but what I love to do, Mark, is to put a deal together. So, I mean, I think that's just what has driven me for however many years and 30 some odd years now doing this stuff. But just I like whether I'm putting somebody in a retail space, which I don't do as much. I do mostly office and industrial. But when you put that person in that space and you see them, build their business, that's the high I get off of this, and putting that transaction together.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a fair amount of that myself. I'm hyper competitive, so I think the thing that's keeping me going is still the winning of the business. And I don't know, it's just the way it is. And so as long as I can keep using that to give energy to my hustle, and then of course, yes, I like putting the deal together, and I like problem solving. I like being that senior broker. Let's talk about the network. You have 2 networks or 3 networks or maybe more networks. You have a network with the brand that you work in within RE/MAX. And I want to start with that, but juxtapose that to the CCIM network. And I will say to people that CCIM network is an absolutely unbelievable network. And maybe the SIOR is equally unbelievable because of the esteem that all of you hold with each other, that when it comes to referrals and sharing business, that carries a tremendous amount of weight. I want to ask you about how you work any of these networks. Do you work these networks? Do you take advantage of having national or global networks in your everyday business?
I mean, how have we known each other for what, 20 years? I mean, because we've both been active at a national level. Maybe I've been less active lately within RE/MAX nationally, but for me to go to the commercial symposium, Mike, you're going to love the plug, Christy, but just, I mean, I'm going to meet 100 like-minded people. Are they going to send me a deal? Maybe not, probably not. But can I get something from being involved with RE/MAX? Absolutely. Best practices, all these other kinds of things. And whether you find that at an R4 or the broker owner conference or whatever it is, great. And look, for me, RE/MAX has done more at actually. If you ask me why do I keep my franchise, it's as a commercial only franchise, and there's some limitations there. But the main reason why is the connection to the residential people in this town, that they know I'm not crossing the line. I'm not going to sell a house, so they can refer me a guy or a gal that they sold $1 million house to, who runs a business, and they have confidence in sending that person to me. So the RE/MAX network serves that purpose for me in more of a broader citywide sense, if that makes sense.
No, it
Um,
makes great sense, Richard. In fact, I'm really interested in you mentioning that because I just got done with Doug Collins in Colorado, and Doug, I think last year paid out nearly, 700 and some $1,000 in referral fees. And I always
wow.
took great pride in that, year after year, we've done many 6-figure years in paying out referral fees. So you're a broker owner with your own firm. So you're not dealing with the residential agents under your roof, but you're taking advantage of the network with the other RE/MAX firms around town, and probably non-RE/MAX firms as well, that are happy to send you business because of your level of professionalism.
And I've gotten way more referrals from the residential agents dealing with, principal owners or decision makers of businesses than I have candidly from, you or anybody else across the country. I don't know, sort of gut check or reality check, but I don't get necessarily a call from a RE/MAX commercial person in Los Angeles. That, if you want to transition in a topic, That's what I use CCIM for.
There you go.
Is I will get more of that sort of Dallas to New Orleans, Atlanta to New Orleans sort of referral that comes from CCIMs. I don't see that from the Remax people. So why do I have both? Why do I emphasize both? And that's really parsing that out. And I'll say, look, just in CCIM, I can be active in my local chapter, and my local chapter is a statewide chapter. That connects me to Baton Rouge. That connects me to Shreveport, which is 5 hours away. And with SIOR, and again, every market's going to be different for whoever's listening to this, but for me, our SIOR is a regional chapter. So it's Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and the panhandle of Florida. We own property in Pensacola. It's 3 hours from me, which is closer than Shreveport. So, but that gives me more of an office and industrial specialized group and a broader geography. And I'm talking at the chapter level. And then obviously, if I get involved at the national level, which I fell into early on, I mean, my God, somebody asked me the other day for a referral of an agent in Virginia. Candidly, I don't know the Remax people in Virginia, but I know a bunch of CCIMs up there. So I sent them to them. And, I just wash my hands of it. But for all those different levels, Mark, and maybe you're starting out, you got to pick your poison, like which one do you want to focus on? And maybe you grow or morph into something different over time. And look, right now, I'm probably more locally based marketing and networking than 10 years ago. I was way more nationally based, sort of doing that.
Well, that's interesting too. No, I think you make really important points to our audience here, and that you adapt to the resources you have in front of you, and how is this brand serving me? How is this designation serving me? How are these networks serving me? What kind of business do I do? And then you adjust accordingly, and that's certainly what we do as well. That's super interesting. Let's talk as we get ready here to wind up here in a little bit. I want to understand, because I look at someone like you, that you have an unbelievable network. You're very, very well known. You've been in the industry a super long time, and you're held in high esteem. So I would think business comes to you for all of those reasons. But are you also actively prospecting, or are you asking your brokers to actively prospect? If you are, what are you doing? Are they on the phone, direct mail, email marketing? You got to talk to me a little bit about this. Do you carve out time? Do you ask them to carve out time? Give me your 2 cents on prospecting, if you would, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying through my teeth if I told you I'm cold calling at this point in my career and life. So I'm not doing it. However, I am networking. And look, Mark, networking has been my way to prospect businesses through other contacts and through other brokers. And look, at a chamber of commerce level, at a economic development level, there's a Metairie business district development group. So, and look, your high school, your college alumni association, I just tell these guys, get out there. So my number one way of prospecting is through networking. I did read that on your sheet in terms of how do you prospect, and I said, well, that is how I prospect. Now, do we do direct mail? Do we do MailChimp and Constant Contact? Yes. And if I'm selling an industrial piece in the port of Iberia we had not too long ago, I go out there, I find the list, I'm putting together a flyer for it, I'm sending it out, and I'm trying like hell to follow up with calls as best I can. And of course, at this point, I need a team because I don't have the time to make 100 calls to all the people in that port. So, but the new guy that's coming in can't get that was, a Goldman Sachs lead through JLL. It was a $10 million deal, and the 25-year-old can't get that deal in our office. So right. It's back to the whole teaming thing, but I'm probably all over the board with that answer. But I mean, networking, and yes, we do prospect, and Google, we've got to pay the piper right now with Google in terms of keyword searches. And that's a constant battle for us to try and keep up with social media and that aspect of marketing. And let me say that, I've got a 30-something-year-old in this. That's his thing, is social media marketing. He's younger. And look, he works it. And if you just go in somehow and start looking up New Orleans and commercial real estate and Remax, you're going to see Cameron Lombardo, give him a plug, but that's what he does, and he's younger. So I think there's sort of that generational shift to that.
Well, I think what I find interesting there is that you can, kind of hang your hat on some of those attributes or resume and history. but it doesn't stop you from having to do all of these other activities, hence the hustle. So you still are doing all of these other activities to make sure that that phone is ringing and the inquiries are coming in. So your brokerage is very, very successful. I think that's the key thing, is that if I find a single weakness out there, yeah, it's maybe going to be a lack of hustle. It's just a lack of implementation. And so, you're working your system, you're working your tools with the right people. You've got all those pieces put in place perfectly. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can give me more on this or not, but I want more. When you're looking in the mirror and you see that guy and you say, hey, well done. Nice job, Richard. You've built a great career. You're a successful producer. You're building successful producers. Outside of hustle, what's it take? I mean, I want you to think about this. What does it take? And think about those people when you're shaking hands and you're meeting all these people at these big CCIM conferences, and he and she are these crazy earners. What is it about them that makes them that top producer? Can anyone be a top producer?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the American dream and we're living it. So it sounds corny, but absolutely. Look, I'll borrow from the CCIM, the 2-day foundations class. One of their sections is on skills and characteristics. So what makes a successful person? And they're different, right? So what tangible skills do you have, Mark? Are you good at computers? Are you good at marketing? Are you good at, one of those tangible skill sets do you have? And again, I could ramble on for a while. Or what characteristics do you have? Are you honest? Do you said, well, it wasn't whatever follow up or whatever you just said a second ago. Anyway, just what sort of personal characteristics do you have? And I would say there's not, to me, I see people that are successful with just a different blend of those things. And I'm beating the drum on this hustle thing, but whether you're good at A, B, and C, and you have, X, Y, and Z skill sets or characteristics, you have to blend those sort of personal characteristics with the skills. And if you just said, let's just take like in our world, if I want to be on the investment side, I want to be a damn good investment broker. Well, you better know how to actually do the financial analysis. Is that education? And are you educated? And this gets into professional development. What are you doing to continue to develop? And I think it's harder and harder the older you get to say, I'm going to try and stay on my A game, because you see these 30-year-olds that come in and they can whip all of us in technology. My son, 23, it frustrates the crap out of me. He picks up my phone and does this in 2 seconds. I'm like, what'd you do? But so maybe the strength of a younger person is technology, right? But you just have to find that blend. And I'm going to give you a vague answer, but I don't think there's any one thing that makes somebody successful. No one skill set or no one characteristic.
No, I accept that. In fact, I like that. I like the idea that you keep the door very open to say that there's many different paths to get to the top, and many different personalities can get to the top. Let me go off the son joining the business thing for a minute. Okay. Because I have my own interest in that naturally. And I think a lot about this because I have 2 of my kids that work with me, and both of them are just turning into fantastic brokers. And it makes me very, very proud. In your case, you said your 23-year-old son is joining the business. Now, do you look at this business and say there's going to be a brokerage business for him in 5 or 10 years, or will the big monopolies and giants and AI take over? I mean, where do you've got to have a pretty good pulse on this. Is there going to be a need for a commercial broker in 10 years?
I think this kind of question came up almost 20 years ago with the advent of the internet and sort of the mainstream of that. Like, is the broker going to be removed? And hasn't your stockbroker, I have a little Schwab account. I don't have millions in there, but I can go on there. I can do my own research. I can trade and I can do it. I just find that real estate is still a fragmented market. It's still an imperfect market, and that what the broker brings to it is not so much the stale data of here's what has happened, but what is going to happen going forward. And so I'm just a believer that there's just an inherent value in that person that's in the market that knows what's going on. And right now, they're about to launch this huge thing in downtown New Orleans. They're going to build 3 towers. It looks like Brickell in Miami. Is this going to happen? I don't know. But does the person from Minneapolis who's looking at a property that's close to this thing have the foggiest clue that that's going on? I guess they could read and pick up some of it, but we know the trends. And so sort of that market knowledge is just, I don't think it's going to be a while before the AI is going to catch up with us humans to be able to interpret what's going on.
There you go. There you go.
So yeah, no, I think the brokerage business, like our fees, is there fee compression issues? Absolutely. Is the automation in our business putting pressure on that? Absolutely. But hell, if I can sell $1 million building in half the time I used to and get, a fraction of the fee, okay, I move on to the next $1 million deal. So I do think there's that sort of pressure in the market is more fee pressure, competition, and the automation, I guess, will drive competition in that sense. But I think the broker will be here for a while.
Good. Encouraging for all of us. I like what Richard just said, you guys. And I'm a big believer that AI is fine, but I'm still banking on human intelligence. No question about it. I'm banking on the gray matter up there. And what Richard said relative to the interpretation of the data. It's one thing to shove a bunch of data across the table, but honestly, and Richard, you work with very sophisticated people, and I work with some of the smartest people in our marketplace. And when I'm working with some of the very smartest people in our marketplace, they don't necessarily want to sift through the data. They want an expert to guide them what the data means. And that's what our job is. So then that way I can say, we've taken in 20 different data points, and here's where we see trends going. Therefore, here's the options laid out before you. All the more reason why they'll say, I'll pay you your fee. You interpret the data. You give me the guidance I need. I'm assuming you feel the same way.
And let me interrupt. I think to bring this home, and I'm not trying to get out of here 5 minutes early, but if I had somebody who said, hey, I'm moving to the Midwest, or I don't know how you define where Minneapolis is. It's up there in a beautiful part of the country. But if somebody's going that way and they say, hey, I'm bringing $5 million with me and I want to buy some investment property up there, am I going to look on CoStar and try and figure that out myself in New Orleans and do it from here? Hell no. And am I going to try and rely on calling the listing agent to do it solely? No, I'm going to send them to you, because I know you've been in the business a while. I know you got the chops. I know you got the market knowledge, and they're going to be taken care of. So, I mean, isn't that a wrap up of what we've just been talking about for almost an hour? Is I'm going to call you on that. I'm not sending it to a computer.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that in every way. Listen, thank you. How do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you? What's the best contact for you? And we'll make sure that they have this.
I appreciate that. I'm in New Orleans, so you can probably just Google RE/MAX Commercial New Orleans, but NOLA Commercial, NOLA, N-O-L-A, commercial.com is our website address. You can call me on my cell phone, 504-915-8877, and I'm pretty identified out there, luckily. So, but just appreciate the time. You're doing a great job, by the way, Mark. I know you're making a specialty out of this, and you're doing a good job. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for that, Richard. Thank you. Listen, guys, he just gave his personal number. I mean, come on, so easy on the text. You don't need to snap him. Just leave the guy alone. He's busy. Richard, thank you again. In fact, I'll be seeing you here in just a couple of weeks. I'm delighted that you're going to be going to the commercial symposium. I'm really, really glad to hear that. I was pushing hard to get folks like you back over there, because it has a huge impact on our brand and people need to meet you. So I'm glad for that. So thank you there. Now let me just close this up. You guys, thanks for being with me. I hope you got a lot out of this. I did. And I've been doing this for a little while, and I got a lot from what Richard just had to tell us here. So stick with us. We're going to have some more interviews coming up, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. So thank you very much. Thanks again, Richard.
Thank you.